Welcome back to Making Machines. On today's episode, as you see, we're putting in the rear end in my 64. You saw that the old one was broken. So, I got this rear end. It's out of a 73 c30. I do not know what model or make it is, because I don't know what model or make was the old one I was taking out either. It had no identifying tags on it, but I know it's out of a stock 73 c30. I'm going to be putting this one in, and that's going to be the video. So, let's get to it. Okay, see? That's how I dragged the new rear end under there. Use the come along, pulled it through the dirt. I was going to try and use those, but they don't work out too well in the dirt, so they got tossed aside and I just drag it through. Did the rest of it by hand. That's pretty much mostly lined up right now. So now I just got to get the jack under it. Alright, so we got everything jacked up and then in, and then I wanted to show you that it doesn't line up, so I have to modify my 73 rear end and able to put it in my 64 panel. So you can see that the leaf springs don't match with my paddle, with my leaf spring purchase on my axle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the purchase off. So I'm going to cut the purchase spring. So I'm going to cut the leaf spring purchase off and move them in so they do line up with my leaf springs. So then I can bolt that 73 rear end into my 64 panel. And you'll be seeing how I do that next. So on to that. And of course I have help from the professional again. He's very much appreciated. He helps out a lot. And now we'll get on to that. Modifying this rear end to put it in for the 64 is removing the leaf spring purchase. So you can see that he's checking the angle of it, which is at 11 degrees.
10 degrees.
Or 10 degrees. You said 11. Yeah, fine.
Doesn't have to be perfect, but the closer the better.
Yeah, so it's 10 degrees at the pumpkin being at 0. And they're going to re-welding them in, I think,
Yeah.
Yeah, so we move both of them roughly an inch in.
Yeah. I'm using a tram gauge to measure them. It just makes it a lot easier to get over the pumpkin, so you don't have to try to tape measure that. Tram gauges are kind of expensive. You can get cheaper ones now. They're nice to have, but if you do buy a cheaper one, double check it. So it should be 40 inches from center to center on these lineup pins. So we just go from edge to edge just to make sure that we're there. This doesn't have to be that critical. The leaf springs on the truck will actually probably move back and forth a quarter inch each way.
Yeah, they have some play. But the more accurate it is, the easier it goes in.
Yeah, the better off you are. Good. I like it.
Good?
Then you like it. I don't know, I can only see it there. A little bit. I can't look it's perfectly on there. Tips of flange.
Yeah, it looks good to me.
Now we just gotta make sure that those are centered in there. They might have to move it just a little more. How we're gonna do that is we'll measure off the flanges on the outside. That's why you go off this, the flange, right? The flange is the same distance. Yeah, so this needs to go, it should be 7, so we're an 1/8 inch too far skewed that way. So we need to go an 1/8 back. So now that we know that distance, we can move them and then remeasure. Because before we didn't really know what how far it was supposed to be. Check the angle one more time.
And we're at 10 degrees going forward. Going towards the yoke.
Yeah, so the yoke will be pointed up when it's under the truck.
Check out the tram one more time. Now you got it all centered up. Everything's lined up. Good. Now we're going to weld it in. Alright, so the last clip I showed was still in the garage. We're just welding the saddles and everything back onto the axle. Fortunately, I didn't film anything of bringing it back out here and putting it on the truck. But I'm going to show you how it all mounted up and everything, so here we go. Alright, so you can see, so we move the axle pads over. They now line up with the leaf springs, or they should go. We use the mounting brackets off the 73 style. So that all bolted right in. And then I used a brand new U-joint out of a 73. It fit my drive line I already have in it. Fits up to my new rear end yoke. I still have to take off the parking brake cables. Other than that, this axle does sit a little wider. Not by a whole much. So looking there, tire there. I don't have much for a gap, so I got to fold these fenders. So I got to make room for that. So I'm going to roll the fenders in some. You see it's already been whacked and dented over here, which is a lot better fitment on the other side because it's not bent. Like you see, man, it's kind of hard to see. Yeah, so I gotta fix that. And show the other side where it's not. So you can see on this side where the corner isn't all bent in. So you can actually fit my fingers between it. Yeah, so I gotta roll my fenders in. Make better clearance for the tires, and that'll be good for that. Gotta take off the parking brake cables, and it should be all ready. Already got all the brakes and everything hooked up and ready, so I'm gonna jack her up, pop the tires off, roll my fenders in, and I'm just gonna use a hammer and beat them in. I'm not gonna use a fancy fender roller or anything like that, because, well, look at the state of her. She doesn't need to be car show quality. She's gonna be a daily. All right. So I'll be back in a little bit once I'm ready to show you there. Alrighty, so I got my tire off. See my fender here. I guess it's really part of the body, but if you look under here, it is already if you come in here, like you see, that's pretty already banged up. Wax probably from blowing a tire or something. But, you know, it's not real nice or anything. Basically what I'm going to do is this lip here, I'm going to fold it in. It's kind of like how this is already folded in up here. I'm pretty much going to fold it up the rest of the way, make it flat, and that'll give me the clearance that I should need. Yeah, so I moved it in some. I'm gonna put my tire back on and see how much clearance we have. Alright, so put the tire on, take it off, whack it in some more, put the tire back on. Did that about 3-4 times. Now, I got that much of a gap. The way it's sit right now is jacked up on its axle, so it should. So, pretty much put my, pretty much the tip of my finger in there, run it on it, so I think that's pretty good there. I like it. And of course I would knock the dents out of there, but it's got a back paneling. I'd have to take that off, cut that all out in order to get to it, so I'm just gonna leave it. It's doing no harm there. Alright, so I'm gonna pull the tire back off, pull the brakes apart, get my, but yeah, so that should be good for this. Now I can do the other side and go from there. Alright, so you can see, get here on the other side. Nah, that's not a whole lot better. It's all wrinkled right there. It's already folded up. This side's pretty good though. But it's about to get whacked, so it's not gonna be much better for much longer. You can see this side doesn't have my inner piece. It was cut off from a long time ago, I guess. See where the floor is rotting out there. Yeah, definitely needs a lot of work. Full Bondo here in the corner. It's all tore up. That's why she's just gonna be a daily. But yeah. So, do the same on this side. We'll roll up the side, roll up the corners there, get more clearance for the tire. And then I'm gonna take, and I'll be back after that. Alright, so you got this one all beat in. Fit my fingers in there. Got plenty of room. Not sure if I can. There we go. See, about the same on the other side. That should be good. And voila, that's how you fit a 73 rear end out of a 73 C30 into a 64 C30. Just a few modifications of the leaf spring pads, rolling in the fender some, and there you go. You gotta change the, at least I only had to change the U-joint on mine. Gotta get a new brake line. There you go. That's how you get one in there. Now you got to take off the parking cable. Let's do that now. Alright, so take off the parking cable here. It's bolted with the nut on the inside, so I have to take the drums off. In order to do that on the 73 rear ends, since it has a floating axle in it, you gotta pull the axle off. So you just take out the bolts. They usually pop off real loose. You can see they have oil in them instead of, and you see they have oil in it instead of grease. So when you pop your axle off, it's gonna be, have some oil in there. So you gotta have a pan down, or I just have a rag because it's not a whole lot of oil. Then you pull your axle out. After you got that off, you look in there. So you can see, it's got a nut here, and it's got a little retainer clip in the back of the nut. So one of these tabs can be folded down into the nut. So you just gotta pull that buck up out of the way, just like that. Make sure there's no other ones in there, which there isn't. After that, they have sockets for these. I don't have one of those, so I'm just gonna use a screwdriver. And they're usually not very tight. That, you just roll it out. Make sure you have a nice clean spot for them. And then this here's the retainer that holds it in. And after that, you got a second nut. Usually isn't very tight either. This one wasn't tight at all. Yeah. So there's the nut. You got a little socket that has the little splines that fit in there, and that allows it to turn the nut. So there's the washer. As you look in here. Now I was way too far adjusted up, but there's my 2 bolts I gotta take out right here. And then it's connected to this linkage right back here. I'll pull that off real quick. So then you disconnect this, you pull this spring back, you push the cable forward, and it just clips on just like that. So you just, voila, it's off. Alright, so once you're all done with that, got my cable off, everything, you put it all back together. Quite simple, you just slides back on there like that. Make sure the drum has a slight drag on the drums, on the brakes. Which it does. And of course, try to put whatever fluid you leaked out of it. The first thing goes back is your washer. Make sure your washer lines up with that. Put it back in there just like, yep. And you take the nut, put the nut back on. Make sure it's not cross-threaded or anything, because if you mess those threads up, you're going to be having a very bad day. Let's use my little screwdriver, stick in the hole, run it in. After you got it in all the way, you just put it there, give it a few taps, make sure it's a little snug. Then you put your keeper on, which is this one here. Then your final outer nut, put nice and tight. And you find the closest tab that's sticking up. In this case, it is this one right here. And you tighten it down to it. And then you fold the tab into the slot. Just like that is there. And voila. All back together. Now from point, you could put you slide your axle back in. Sometimes you gotta pull back a little bit, push down on it, slide it forward, let it find its hole. Then you let it slide in the teeth. Wipe any oil off you got on there. On the gasket. It all slides back together. Line it all up for the bolts. And that is how I put my 73 rear end into my 64 panel. So if you enjoyed or if you learned something new, please like, subscribe, comment. And thank you very much for watching. Until next time, and we'll see you again.